After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the concept of currency futures and currency options. Differentiate amongst forwards, futures and options. Know about the different types of exotic and hybrid currency options. To begin with, in a foreign exchange market, potential players can trade foreign exchange by using different types of instruments with different maturity date. The instruments may be cash, term, spot, forward, futures, swaps and options contracts. In this module, foreign currency futures and options are discussed. Understand the concept of currency futures and currency options. The first one is currency future and the second one is currency option. Currency future. Futures contracts in commodities such as silver, cotton, gold, wheat, rice, etc. have been in existence since long. With the introduction of first futures contracts in 1972, at the International Monetary Market, that is IMM of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange or CME, the exchange traded currency futures contracts have started. Therefore, currency future contracts are of very recent creation. Under a futures contract, a buyer commits today to buy a currency at a specified date in the future at a price that is fixed today, and seller makes the reverse commitment. Basically, it is an agreement between two parties, a party with short position who agrees to sell and party with long position who agrees to buy. Corporations, banks and security firms are largely using currency futures for hedging exchange rate and interest rate risk. Currency option. Like currency futures, foreign currencies are traded in the market for currency options as well. The rationale is to either hedging of foreign exchange exposure or making of profits through speculation. By definition, currency options contract confers on the options buyer privilege of not exercising the contract when exchange rate is not favorable. For example, if a person decides to acquire call options, that is the right to buy, which is to buy Swiss francs at a price of 0.65 US dollar along with a premium for rate of 0.004 US dollar. On the maturity date, if spot rate of the Swiss francs is lower, the agreed upon rate, he will let the option expire because he will be able to buy it in the spot market at a cheaper rate. Differentiate amongst forwards, futures and options. The forward contracts, future contracts, option derivatives, forward contracts versus future contracts, futures versus options derivatives. Forward contracts. Forward contracts are contracts between two parties whereby one party agrees to sell to another party currency at some point in the future for a price agreed upon now. The mutually agreed price in a forward contract is known as the delivery price. The amount of the sale as well as when it occurs is customizable to the contract. The buyer agrees to pay cash at a later date when the seller delivers the currency. In case the party wishes to reverse the contract, it has to compulsorily go to the same counterparty, which bring in a monopoly situation can command the price it wants. Problems with this type of derivative include the difficulty in finding someone to transact with. The contracts are non-transferable and a high probability of risk of default faced by both the parties. With forward contracts entered on a one-to-one basis and with no standardization, the forward contracts have a very low degree of liquidity. Features of forward contracts. They are bilateral contracts and hence exposed to counterparty risk. Each contract is custom designed, hence is unique and on a one-to-one basis with no standardization in terms of contract size, expiration date, and the asset type and quality. The contract price is generally not available in public domain. The contract has to be settled by delivery of the currency on expiration date. A forward contract may be either on premium or discount. It is said to be on premium when forward rate is higher than the spot rate. If reverse takes place, it is said to be on discount. Future contracts. A future contract is a standardized contract between two parties where one of the parties commits to sell and the other to buy a stipulated quantity and quality where applicable of a currency at an agreed price on a given date in the future. The contract expires on a pre-specified date, which is called the expiry date, delivery date, or final settlement date of the contract. The futures contract represents an improvement over the forward contracts in terms of standardization, performance guarantee, and liquidity. Option derivatives. An option is the right but not the obligation to buy or sell a specified amount of currency at a specified price, exercise or the strike price, on or before a given date in the future, that is expiration date. The buyer or holder of the option purchase the right from the seller or writer for a consideration, which is called the premium. The seller or writer of an option is obligated to sell the option as per the terms of the contract when the buyer or holder exercises his right. Option on stocks were first traded on an organized stock exchange in 1973. There are two parties in an options contract. One party takes a long position, that is, buys the option, while the other party takes a short position, that is, it sells the option. It is basically of two types: call option, that is right to buy the option, and put option, that is right to sell the option. Next, we will talk about forward contracts versus future contracts. That is standardized versus custom sized contract, counterparty risk, liquidity, mark to market, privity of contract, conclusion of the contract, and margins. Standardized versus customized contract. Forward contract is customized while the future is standardized. To be more specific, the terms of forward contracts are individually agreed between two counterparties, while futures being traded on exchanges have terms standardized by the exchange. Only the price is negotiated. Futures are always traded on an exchange, whereas forwards always trade over the counter or can simply be a signed contract between two parties. Counterparty risk. While there is a risk of non-performance of a forward contract, it is not so in the case of futures contract. This is because of the existence of a clearing house or clearing corporation associated with the futures exchange, which takes the opposite position in each trade, so it becomes the buyer to the seller and the seller to the buyer. It acts as an intermediary for each contract. Liquidity. Futures contracts are much more liquid and their price is much more transparent due to standardization and market reporting of volumes and price. Mark to market. Future contracts are market to market every day to reflect the gains or losses the party makes by crediting or debiting the accounts of the parties respectively. Hence, profits and losses are settled daily. In case of a forward contract, the settlement takes place on the date of the maturity, so that the profit or loss is booked on maturity only. Privity of contract. In case of physical delivery, the forward contract specifies to whom to make the gains or losses the party makes by crediting or debiting the accounts of the parties respectively. On the other hand, the two parties do not necessarily know each other in case of a futures contract. Conclusion of the contract. A forward contract is generally concluded with the delivery of the asset in question, whereas the futures contracts are settled sometimes with the delivery of the asset and generally with the payment of the price difference. Margins. Margin is required to be kept by both the parties with a clearing corporation in case of a futures contract. There is no such requirement in case of a forward contract. Futures versus options derivatives. Futures are agreements or contracts to buy or sell specified quantity of the underlying assets at a price agreed upon by the buyer and seller on or before a specified time. Both the buyer and seller are obligated to buy or sell the underlying asset, whereas in case of options, the buyer enjoys the right and not the obligation to buy or sell the underlying asset. Both parties of a futures contract must fulfill the contract on the settlement date. Futures contracts have symmetric risk profile for both the buyer as well as the seller, whereas options have asymmetric risk profile. In case of options, for a buyer or holder of the option, the downside is limited to the premium or the option price he has paid, while the profits may be unlimited. For a seller or writer of an option, however, the downside is unlimited or say not capped, while profits are limited to the premium he has received from the buyer. The futures contracts prices are affected mainly by the prices of the underlying asset. The prices of options are, however, affected by prices of the underlying asset, time remaining for expiry of the contract, interest rate, and volatility of the underlying asset. While buying or selling of future contract does not require any price or cost to be paid except margin requirements, the options are bought and sold on the exchange for a price called the premium. Exotic option. It is special type of option derivative which has features making it more complex than commonly traded vanilla options. Exotic derivatives normally may have several triggers relating to determination of payoff. It may also include non-standard underlying instrument developed for a particular client or for a particular market. They are generally traded over the counter. After understanding the concept of hybrid and exotic options, there is a need to know the different types of such options derivatives and their workings. This section deals with the concepts and workings of the different types of option derivatives. Cylinder option. Cylinder option is also known as tunnel option or range forward. This instrument requires a simultaneous purchase of a call and the sale of a put option or vice versa at different strike to create tunnels. The selection of strike prices are done in such a way that the upfront cost of creating tunnel becomes zero. Basically, this instrument enables the trader to reduce the cost of an option by to forego gains when the hedged currency strengthens above a given level. For example, a trader receiving US dollar may buy a UK pound call US dollar put at UK pound per US dollar at 1.75 with a floor at 1.65. If the US dollar weakens above 1.75, then the trader is protected. However, if the dollar strengthens against the pound to below 1.65, trader gives up any further gains and sell US dollar at 1.65. Ratio range forward. There is more flexible variation of cylinder, range forward or tunnel option. This instrument allows the amount of the option bought and sold to be different. At the same time, in the ratio range forward, the ratio of the two amounts is chosen in such a way that the upfront cost is brought down to the desired level. Average rate option or Asian option. It mainly uses the average rate over a set period for choosing the strike price so as to bring down the option premium vis-a-vis a straight option. There are two types of average rate options: average spot rate options and average strike rate options. Average spot rate options. Spot rates are averaged over the option period, and this average is compared to the strike rate chosen by the option buyer. Average strike rate option. The option buyer selects the expiry date and averaging dates. On the expiry of the option, the average rate becomes the strike price of the option. Average rate options are typically used by companies that have periodic payments or receivables and wish to have protection against unfavorable currency movements. Contingent option. Contingent options are enforceable upon the happening or not happening of certain prescribed events. For example, a call on the dollar, say 65 Indian National Rupee, becomes exercisable only if Indian bank rate is more than 6%. Knockout options. Options always provide a buyer with an unlimited gain and limited loss. In case of knockout option, unlimited gains become limited only to the buyer and thus premium becomes cheaper. As the name implies, the option lapses if the exchange rate drops below or goes up the strike out rate. For example, a call on the dollar, say 65 Indian National Rupee, lapses if at any time the rate falls below, say US dollar per 60 Indian National Rupees, or above, say US dollar per 70 Indian National Rupee. Knock-in options. As opposite to knockout options, it becomes animate only when a certain barrier is reached. If the barrier is never reached, the option expires worthless. For example, a call on the dollar, say 65 Indian National Rupee, becomes operative only before its expiry. Spot rate above, say US dollar per 70 Indian National Rupee or below, say US dollar per 60 Indian National Rupee. Binary options. This instrument becomes operative when a predetermined amount is paid to the buyer if the option is in the money at the time of expiry. If it is not in the money at the time of expiry, then nothing will be paid. Ladder options. Ladder option is a type of option that allows the investor to lock in gains on the underlying asset once predetermined rates are reached. Ladder options can be structured to reset the strike in either one or both the directions. Since profits are locked in advance, ladder options are considered to be less risky as compared to traditional options. Moreover, there is no need to constantly watch the behavior of the underlying assets or security. Balloon options. Balloon options mean balloon in size once a trigger is reached. It is an option that has a strike price which increases by a defined or specified ratio after the underlying approaches define
or specific price. For example, there would be increase of $5 for every dollar provided the underlying reaches $60. Compound option. It is also known as option on option. The purchaser has the right to buy a specific option at a predetermined price on a fixed future date. This instrument is designed for contingent foreign exchange liabilities. The initial option premium will be very low than for a standard option.
Forward contract is one-to-one bipartite contract, which is to be performed in future at the terms decided today. Delivery and payments will take place as per the terms of this contract on the designated date and place. Future contracts are organized, standardized contracts in terms of quantity, quality, delivery time and place for settlement on any date in future. These contracts are traded on exchange. An option is the right but not the obligation to buy or sell a specified amount of currency at a specified time, that is exercise and strike price, on or before a given date in the future expiration date. An exchange traded forward contract is known as futures contract. Forward contracts are tailor-made depending on requirement of the contract buyers or sellers. However, being exchange traded futures contracts are standardized. Contract size, maturity period, etc. Currency futures are standardized foreign exchange derivative contracts on a recognized stock exchange or buy or sell a standard quantity of one currency against another on a specified future date at a specified price. Exotic option is special type of option derivative which has features making it more complex than commonly traded vanilla options. Exotic derivatives normally may have several triggers relating to determination of payoff. It may also include non-standard underlying instrument developed for a particular client or for a particular market. They are generally traded over the counter. Cylinder option is also known as tunnel option or a range forward. This instrument requires a simultaneous purchase of a call and sale of a put option or vice versa at different strike to create tunnels. Ratio range forward option refers the ratio of the two amounts is chosen in such a way that the upfront cost is brought down to the desired level. Average rate option or Asian option uses the average rate over a set period of choosing the strike price so as to bring down the option premium vis-a-vis a straight option. There are two types of average rate options: average spot rate options and average strike rate options. Contingent options are enforceable upon the happening or not happening of certain prescribed events. Knockout options are a special type of option in which unlimited gains become limited one to the buyer and thus premium becomes cheaper. Knock-in options are entirely different from knockout options. It becomes animate only when a certain barrier is reached. If the barrier is never reached, the option expires worthless. Binary options become operative when a predetermined amount is paid to the buyer if the option is in the money at the time of expiry. If it is not in the money at the time of expiry, then nothing will be paid. Ladder option is a type of option that allows the investor to lock in gains on the underlying asset once predetermined rates are reached. Balloon options mean balloon in size once a trigger is reached. It is an option that has a strike price which increases by a defined or specified ratio after the underlying approaches defined or specific price. Compound option, also known as option on option. The purchaser has the right to buy a specific option at a predetermined price on a fixed future date. This instrument is designed for contingent foreign exchange liabilities. The initial option premium will be very low than for a standard option.